Hello and God bless. Welcome to Virtual Church TV. In today's message, we're going to be speaking about the complexity of humanity.
So the one thing about human beings is that human beings are very, very complicated creations. Like a human being is not a simple being to deal with. If you ever had a conversation with somebody, especially when you and them are not on the same page, obviously you can realize that human beings are very, very complicated. For example, you can do something for somebody that makes them happy. And the next year you do exactly the same thing, nothing changed, exactly the same thing. And they'll be frustrated with you. If I was going to take a card, for example, for somebody's birthday and you get them a card from Hallmark and it has something witty on it, happy birthday to you, wishing you all the best, love you or whatever. You give them that card. If you go back to Hallmark and you buy that same card the next year, even though they screened for it this year, they're probably not going to be as happy if you give it to them a second time. If you go back to Hallmark and you buy it a third year in a row, a lot of people are going to have a problem with it. And I think a part of that, it doesn't explain all of the complication about human beings, but people are complicated. So we're complicated in positive ways. We're complicated in negative ways. We're complicated in so many different ways. And I think the reason why we have such a uniqueness to us is because as created beings, we are unique from every other creation. There is a distinction between us and every other thing that's been created. And I think that sometimes we don't really sit down and contemplate and think to ourselves how different we are than every other created being. Now, I think that when you deal with the idea of sin, because I'm not going to deal with sin that much, but sin makes us even more complicated. Because not only are you dealing with the psychology of people and how we see things differently and our diversity in terms of how we have different perspectives and so forth, but then sin now also distorts our perception. So we already have conflicts in terms of our views and how we see things, but now sin puts even a further conflict within us that even within a person, sometimes you have arguments with yourself. I don't know if you've ever had an argument with yourself. A lot of people will say that they haven't, but if you really think about some of the things in your life, I think all of us have had some kind of argument with ourselves. I don't know if you've ever been home and you feel like eating something and you feel too tired to get up, but the hunger is telling you that you need to get something to eat, and you're having a war with yourself, whether you're going to get up or whether you're going to sit down, and sooner or later, one part of yourself wins. But at the end of the day, we are so complicated that we even have conflict with ourselves. I don't know all the reasons why are these complications within us, but I do know a few reasons why there are some complications within us. I covered one already, that sin causes us to have this kind of double-mindedness where we're even fighting with ourselves whether we should do what's good or whether we should do what's bad. So that's one level of it. But I think even beyond sin, the reason why we're complicated is because number one, we're actually made in the image and likeness of God. So because we're made in the image and likeness of God, God himself is complicated. God is not a simplistic being. And even though we are not God and we're not on the same level as God, the fact that there's something about us that demonstrates the realness of God. So if you watch somebody, especially when a person has a good heart, you can see the image of God in them. So that very fact, the way that we were created, that God breathed in us the breath of life, that very event makes us a complex creation. So we're emotional beings. And if I'm looking at it from a positive perspective, and I'm going to try to keep most of my thoughts positive because I'm trying to just look at the complexity of humanity, even despite sin. But we are such loving people that when somebody else is in pain, we have the capacity to cry for people we don't even know. When somebody else is going through a hard time and I'm having a wonderful day, I can stop all of my joy, and I can empathize and feel their pain. And the same thing with you. You may be going through some hardship yourself, or you may be having a wonderful day and you see somebody going through something really, really bad, but you're able to stop and to empathize and to care for them. Sometimes you choose not to, and sometimes I choose not to, but we all have the capacity and the ability to be able to have that God love and have that kind of character of kindness about us. So I think that makes us very complicated beings. Then on top of it, God himself has put us into a position of authority because he said that he has given women and men dominion over the earth. So that means that you have rulership and you have power in the earth over things. So the earth itself, as great as it is, as all of the beautiful resources that it has, as all the riches that it has, God has put us in a position to have authority in the world. Now, because of conflict between people, sometimes people want to steal your authority, or sometimes people want to stop you from having authority. But at the same time, God has created you to have authority. So once you begin to take positions of leadership, even if you don't take it, but it's offered to you, it makes your life more complicated. When you think about your own self, when it comes to life, it's generally more complicated to be the boss than to be the employee. Now, the employee may work harder, the employee may have a challenging day, but not always, but generally speaking, life gets more complicated for leaders than for those that follow. And because God has made human beings the leaders on the earth, our life is going to be more complicated than the creative order. Another thing is that God has created us with deep needs. With deep needs. I'm not going to cover all of the human needs that we have, but God has created us with deep needs. So if I just cover 3 of them, God has created us for a need to have certainty. To have certainty, security, to feel protected, to know how our day is going to go. I don't really think about it, and you probably don't really think about it, but the fact that you have food in your fridge, and even though you may not have the things that you want, but the fact that you know that there's something there, it brings a comfort to you. And that comfort that comes to you lets you know that, you know what? I'm not going to starve. I got food to eat. And what happens now is that there is a certainty and there's a security that we require as human beings. When you're a person and you don't know where your meal is coming from, it affects you mentally. Even if food comes to you every day, but you don't know if it's going to come tomorrow, it affects you mentally. But even if you have to put it on your Visa or your credit card, if you know tomorrow that you're going to have food, that you're going to have your needs met, then you're going to be settled. I think a part of the problem that we have with this whole pandemic thing is that people don't 100% know what the future is going to look like. So you don't have certainty if they're going to deal with this pandemic. So the uncertainty brings stress. It brings depression. It brings a lot of negative things because as human beings, a part of our complexity is that we need certainty. But then there's another side of the human being that's kind of weird, is that we need to have uncertainty. Our life cannot be predictable. If I know tomorrow exactly how my day is going to go, if I know tomorrow I'm going to wake up at 8 o'clock, I'm going to work on my computer from 8 to 10, and from 10 to 10:30 I'm going to take a break. And from 10:30 to 12 o'clock, I'm going to work and I'm going to go and see clients. And from 12 to 1:15, I'm going to have lunch. And from 1:15 to 4:30, I'm going to work. And I'm going to go home after work and I'm going to watch the same television show that I watch every day. And I'm going to maybe go to the gym for an hour and I'm going to eat my dinner and I'm going to watch some television. I'm going to go to bed and do it all over the next day. If I know I'm going to do that every day, even though I'm happy for the certainty, I'm going to have an uneasiness with my life. I start having questions like, what is my purpose? And why is my life like this? Because we desire as a need to have uncertainty in our life. Not always, but to have some element of our life that has a surprise. To be able to do something that we, don't do every day. So that we can experience life. So people do things to have a different experience. So you may have food in the fridge, but you go to a restaurant to eat, so you can just do something different. You may be at home and you may be with your family, spending time with your family, but you decide to go and hang out with some friends just so you can change up your life, because there's a human need within our complexity that calls us to have uncertainty. So we want to have certainty, but we also want to have uncertainty. And another thing that human beings need is that human beings need fellowship, or they need belonging, or they need love. They need to know that somebody cares about them. And if you're living life and you have all the food you need, and you're living life and you have money that you can go and take trips and have variety in your life, but you don't have solid friendships, or you don't have someone to love in your life, or you don't have good family connections, siblings, or you don't have, a best friend or whatever, life becomes hard even if you have all your other needs met. So that's a complexity about human beings, that a human being, even if one of their needs are met or two of their needs are met, if all of their needs are met, they tend to be unhappy unless they have a really strong connection with God and they kind of point to God to meet many of their needs. But even in that situation, in this same scripture that we read today, even God says that, it's good to have a relationship with me, but you need also to have a relationship with other people, because Adam couldn't find anybody that he could relate to. So that's why God created Eve. So even in our relationship with God, there is a deeper need for human connection. So I just wanted to go through that to say that a part of the complexity of people is that we have needs. And so number one, we're made in the image and likeness of God. Number two, we have dominion and authority. Number three, we have needs. Number four is related to number three, but number four is that we're social beings, that along with having love, we need to cooperate with other people. So we cannot live life successfully by ourselves. A lot of people will make it seem like that. And the world that we live in kind of gives us that deception that we can. But at the end of the day, it's all an illusion. We cannot survive in this world without other people. And if we do survive in this world without other people, it's a hard life. Every time I go into my car, I have just stepped and sat down into something that was created by a group of people. When I drive on the road, I'm driving on a road that was created by a group of men and hopefully women who paved that road. When I get to the store and I go into the store, that store was stocked by several different companies, and it was stocked literally by people. So you cannot enjoy life and live life without people. But because we are social beings, that makes our life even more complicated. Because I cannot plan my life and not take into consideration the effect that others could have on me, because I'm a social being. So I may be thinking that I'm going to be doing work tonight, and someone might be in trouble that I'm close to, and I might have to put aside everything that I'm doing and take care of their need. So as human beings, we have a very complicated life. And then number five is humanity was created to serve and to worship God. We were created to love God. So even in that, there's a complication, because all of us, I believe, have a pull on the inside to serve God, but we do it different ways. And there are some ways of worshiping God that are illegitimate, that are not correct. And there are some ways of worshiping God that are correct. But even when you worship God the correct way, there are probably thousands of different ways to worship God the correct way. Some people, they just love to just pray and to connect with God that way. Some people, they love to read the word and connect with God that way. Some people, they love to sing. And even in singing, there's a diversity. Some people, they sing country music to worship God. Other people, they sing gospel music to worship God. Other people, they sing praise worship to worship God. Other people sing from a hymnal. Some people sing from a screen. Some people sing from their spirit. Like some people just sing from what comes to their head. But all of these people are worshiping God in legitimate ways. But there's a diversity in our worship. But I'm just saying all this to say that when we're dealing with human beings are complicated.